Hello, all, and welcome to the Collectors of Power. Today is episode 5. We are glad to have you here on our journey. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Adam from Battle Ram Blog, and also joining us are our regular crew. We've got Battle Armor Rhino, we got Bobby,
Hello, how you doing?
and we got Bob.
Hello, fans.
And you got Ryan here. So we're glad to have you along as we dive deep into what Adam's been up to, things he's been doing, and discuss a little bit further on some of our favorite characters. So, Adam, great to have you on the show here today. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started with your blog and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, by the way. Appreciate it. My first time on a video podcast, so this should be interesting. So Battle Ram Blog it started out as just me trying to remember all of the things that I was researching about Masters of the Universe. So like literally I created a free WordPress account and just started. I think I did like 10 posts, 10 different articles before I even showed it to anybody. It was literally just, different places around the web, he-man.org, all the different, venues where you could do some research, okay, what's, I would look at it like, what's the history of Merman? We've seen this concept art, so how did it evolve? What was the earliest piece of art, and how did it become turn into a toy? And then kind of where did those influences come into the whether it's comic books or the cartoon. So it was kind of getting my thoughts together, and then it kind of snowballed from there. So that was in, I think, 2015 when I started that. So it's been going for quite a while. There's quite a few articles. It goes into really ridiculous, geeky depth, way more details than probably most people would want or care about. But that's basically how it started.
Nice. So when you're when you're researching something like that, you mentioned Merman, like early concept art. How do you go about finding all that information, like to figure that out?
So a lot of that, so at the beginning, it was kind of fortuitous. There was the Art of He-Man Dark Horse book, where a lot of that was coming out. Previously, there had been the Power and Honor Foundation catalog that they did, which had a lot of concept art. So a lot of it was just me piggybacking on research that other people had done and sort of fleshing it out and making connections. But as I went, I figured out there were a few creators online. So Ted Mayer was on Facebook. He was my first interview. So I reached out to him and said, hey, I've got this little blog. Would you mind answering some questions? And he sent me a bunch of his concept art. So I got all these B sheets for Battle Ram, some of his like some Horde characters that hadn't been created into toys. So a lot of that came directly from Ted, and then from there, I was able to interview other people, Mark Taylor, David Wolfram. He sent me a bunch of his concept images. So a lot of it's just asking for it, being a little bit audacious and saying, hey, you don't know who I am, but can you talk to me? And hoping that they'll share that with you.
That's awesome. It's kind of like fundraising. Always ask for more than what you want, and then you get what you really want.
Right, exactly.
Well, that's awesome. So, as you've been doing this and kind of putting all of this together, what do you think is one of your most memorable connections that you've made with anybody in the motu fandom, creators, any of that stuff?
Definitely, probably the three that stand out the most were Ted Mayer. He shared a ton with me. He even, we Skyped once, and he's a jazz guitarist. I play guitar. He shared some guitar tips with me. Mark Taylor. Most of my interaction with Mark was through Rebecca, his wife. So before he passed, I got a lot of his thoughts, but I also got a lot of questions answered from Rebecca too. She worked on the brand. She's a sweetheart. And David Wolfram, he's another one who just shared. He gave me way more than I asked for. Tons of information that I didn't even know to look for. So I would put those three.
So I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. So for people maybe who are listening who don't know who those people are, can you give us a little insight of who they were and what they did?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ted Mayer, I'll start it with Ted and Mark. So Mark Taylor did most of the concept art for the first wave of He-Man toys. So Castle Grayskull, He-Man Skeletor, Beastman, Man-at-Arms, Tila, Stratos, Zodak. Those are all his designs. So he was basically charged with designing all this stuff. He was also doing the not the art for the boxes, but the art direction. So he did that, but he needed somebody with a more of a mechanical mindset to really do the vehicles. So that's where he got his friend Ted, who was also at Mattel. Ted Mayer did the designs for Battle Ram, Wind Raider. Ted would go on to do designs for Attack Track, Talon Fighter, and then he worked on things like the early Evil Horde figures, Snout Spout, a few other things. So those guys are kind of from the beginning at Mattel doing Masters. And then David Wolfram came in towards the end of the original Masters line. He did things like Scareglow and King Randor, like that version of King Randor anyway, the toy version, Ninjor, a few things like that. And then he did most of the villains for the new Adventures of He-Man line.
That's awesome, and we know Bobby has an obsession with the villains in the new event.
Well, at least he got the Snout Spout name right, right, Rhino?
Yeah, I call him the wrong name every time.
Sprout. Call him Hose Nose? Oh, Sprout Snout?
Yeah, Snout Sprout, something weird like that, yeah?
Yeah.
Every time I mess it up.
So how long has the website been live? I know I've been reading it for a long time. I remember I used to have a Twitter before my Vintage Motu, and I followed you for a while. I believe it might have been, 2014, 15, maybe you started it?
Yeah, 2015 is when I started it. It probably picked up by 2016. It was getting a lot of views. So yeah, and it's probably, I haven't been as active on it as I should just because I've just gotten really busy. There are probably I've covered most of the original vintage toys. There's probably about 10 figures that I need to cover. I'm working on right now an article about Eternia, since we've got the Motu Origins Eternia playset coming out. I thought that'd be a good timing for that. But yeah, it's pretty big site. It gets used a lot by people who are doing research. I know Pixel Dan used it a lot for the Toys of Masters of the Universe book. So yeah, I created it as a resource for myself, and I'm glad that people have been able to use it for reference or just to learn things.
Yeah, I used to love read. I still read it, I shouldn't say, but I like to look at what you have with the variants and all that stuff. So that was real helpful, and I appreciate you for doing that. It's something that I would have never really known unless someone else has done it. So when you brought up Pixel Dan's information for his book, could you tell me about how that came about? What your involvement is on it?
Yeah. So that was so the project was kind of managed by Val Staples. Pixel Dan did most of the writing on it, but so Val kind of did he has the relationship with Dark Horse, who was the publisher for the book, and he had the existing relationship with Mattel. So he contacted me. Originally, it was just to include some of the interviews that I did on my blog. They wanted to put them in the book. As well as have me interview some additional people. So I did that. I ended up doing more, though, one of the things I suggested to add was a timeline. So if you look somewhere in the book, they've got a nice little graphic. It's a timeline of specific dates in Masters of the Universe, and that was also from my blog, but they put it together with a graphic. And then just kind of towards the end, it was a huge project for Dan. He was doing writing. He was flying out to people's houses to photograph their rare, expensive toys. So he just didn't have time to do everything. So I also ended up doing sort of the text, the write-ups for about half of the Motu Classics line. So it was a huge project. It took up. I know for all of us, it was a work. It wasn't work. It was fun work, but it was still a lot of hours, a lot of late nights working on that thing. It was an experience. I was glad to be a part of it. I know for the classic stuff, I had to. Pixel Dan used my blog, so when I was doing classics, I used his reviews to make sure I wasn't missing anything.
That sounds like a lot. I know it has to be a lot of research and all that stuff. I remember when that book was announced, I didn't even know who was doing it, and then I found out that it was Pixel Dan when he announced it himself. So that was pretty exciting. I was like, that's pretty cool that people in the community like that get the chance to work on something. It's beautiful. I love the book. I look at it all the time and use it for reference, especially classics. I don't have a lot of the figures, but I like to see what was out, because I missed it because I moved at the time when they were coming out. So, but that's fantastic. You guys got anything you want to ask Adam? Put him on the spot. I'm sorry.
Oh, so many things. I have so many things. First thing, have you all already been in talks about a new volume? Because we've had a tremendous amount of new figures launched since the book has came out. We're kind of in the golden age of Motu right now. Have you all talked about a new book with updated origins and Masterverse and CGI and everything?
So I was at PowerCon recently. Somebody asked Dan that question. He said that that's a possibility. I haven't been approached about it. So that's at least something that's being talked about. I don't know if that's actually going to happen or when it's going to happen, but that's I wouldn't be surprised if that was done.
It's kind of one of those things you have to. When do you do it?
Right. Yeah. I know he's working on like a Turtles book, like a Turtles toy guide too. So.
Yeah, I remember him seeing them tease that. PowerCon, since you brought that up, how many PowerCons have you been to? Did you go to the ones out in California?
No, this was my first one. It was always just logistically it was hard to get out. Timing's kind of not the greatest. It's my wife's birthday and our anniversary right around when PowerCon is, but having it in Ohio, I'm in Chicago area, just we could drive down. It was a lot easier.
Would you like to see? I've never been to one either, but I would like to know, do you think there would ever be another one that's focusing just on Masters of the Universe again? Or is that just something Mattel's not letting anybody do?
I'm not sure, sort of, on the back end. I mean, it sounds like Val would do it if they wanted to do it again. I don't know exactly what their strategy is, if they're just moving away from doing officially being involved in cons, but I could see it coming back again. A lot of this stuff is just, it depends on the brand strategy, which can change from year to year.
Another question I had is, with all of the knowledge that you've compiled, for the blog and all the people you've interviewed and everything like that, I think it would be really fascinating to hear your take on how everything was kind of created, fly by the seat of your pants. You had said earlier that you helped on how the toys that shaped us, everything on that. If you would kind of give your insight as to how the Motu story kind of changed and evolved throughout its creation, I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. I think for I mean, I know there's, depending on who you're talking to, you're going to get slightly different versions of the story of how Motu came about. I think definitely the earliest incarnation, before it was, here's a Toyland that we're doing. It starts with Mark Taylor's artwork. It kind of, I know Mark when he was at Mattel. He started at Mattel, not working in Mattel, but he was a freelancer. He did a lot of packaging art. He and Rebecca both did packaging art for Barbie, and I think they did Tarzan and Big Jim and a few other things. But he was brought in at some point to work full time in house at Mattel. And it kind of started. He would put he ever since he was a kid, he did fantasy art. He would have it up in his cubicle. He said, I know in one of the interviews he said basically he didn't have enough to do, so he would also draw in his downtime at Mattel. So when Mattel was looking for something, they had passed on the Star Wars line that had gone to Kenner, and they had you can kind of see why they would not be wanting to take a chance on an unknown property, but it blew up and they were looking for something to compete when they didn't have the Star Wars toys. So that's when you get some of the marketing guys, you get Roger Sweet, everybody putting together a pitch. Here's what do we got, so they all the ideas they could grab. So there's the story of the 3 different He-Man prototypes that get presented. There's the Barbarian one, which not a lot of people know. All the costume in it was designed by Mark Taylor. So even that one he was involved in. And there's the Spaceman and the military version. And so they greenlit the Barbarian. So a lot of it was very fast and furious, creating all these different characters, trying to balance out the colors, trying to make kind of a cohesive line. I know a lot of the thought was originally a lot of the thought was it's kind of more of a generic thing. You could take it anywhere. You could take it in the future. There was an idea early on where you could, if He-Man changed his costume, he would gain additional powers, or Stratos had the same thing. You'd get, they had a freelance writer who came up with the basic story with Don Glut, did a lot of the early work there. It was kind of just fast and furious, get this out to market, and it was a runaway hit. It was just not nobody was expecting it to do well. It was just something that kind of exploded, and then what had been sort of at the corner of Mattel, just a few people working on it, all of a sudden all eyes were on it, and that's when you get at that point Mark Taylor left Mattel, and then Roger Sweet took over the line for the 83 for the next several years. He was in charge, and that's where you kind of get the explosion too. If you get a lot more gimmicky stuff in the line, it's a lot more you get more marketing input, I think, whereas the original stuff was a little bit more alternative. It was a little weirder, a little funkier.
So I remember reading somewhere where I don't know if you tweeted it or something, but you mentioned that you got into Masters of the Universe because your brother. Is that correct?
Well, my brother and I used to play it together. So like in '82, I don't know if it was Christmas or my birthday. We got He-Man, Skeletor, Beastman, Man-at-Arms, and with no context other than the little mini comics. I couldn't read that well, so I was mostly just looking at the pictures. But we used to play with them together. So I was into it from as early as I was aware back in '82.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, same here. I was 9 years old in '82, and I got my first stuff for Christmas that year, and I never looked back. It's been fun. Yeah. So I know we were talking before, but you said Merman is your favorite character. How does that happen?
I don't know. I when I first got into He-Man again as an adult, which is about 10 years ago, I don't know if I would have said that then. I think a lot of it is just me writing up the blog, and then doing a lot of looking at artwork and concepts, and just over time, just like Merman's, like, I don't know if it's, I love the colors and the sort of the aquatic theme, and I don't know, it's just a really kind of I don't know what sort of draws me. I know he's got kind of a crazy face. You've got the two different head sculpts, the sort of the cross sell and the vintage toy looks. I don't know. It's just something about him fascinates me.
Yeah, I always like to see how people react to certain characters and why it strikes them.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing. What was your? So you have an original Grayskull. How did you get that one?
So the rare Castle Grayskull that I have.
Yes, yes.
So that one, it was literally just an eBay auction that
Oh,
came
okay.
up. But the thing about so this first release Castle Grayskull, just so people who are aware, it's basically what differentiates it is it's got much neater face paint, and it's got different the green plastic accessories like the jaw bridge, some of the little mechanisms under the trapdoor. They're a lighter green. It's got some different code numbers. The only reason I was looking for it was because I had started writing articles on first release, like Taiwan, first release, 1982 figures. So I was looking at a lot of people know, the first Skeletor, he's kind of got the half boots and he's got the, orange cheeks. First Man-at-Arms has red dots on his helmet, things like that. So I was doing a lot of research and early catalog images, and I noticed in a couple of pictures, really early stuff, they had this Castle Grayskull that was different. And a friend of mine, who's interested in that as well, he just noticed this eBay auction as well online. At the time, I hadn't heard anybody really talking about the first release Grayskull, so I sold some stuff and got it. So that one was just recognizing what's out there. A lot of way back in the day, a lot of people weren't into variants. Now it's become
Right.
There's more awareness of that.
Yeah, I would like to see, like, I don't have access to any of my Christmas photos or anything back then, but I would love to see if I have some of that. I wish I still had it, because that'd be something. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah. So, Bob, do you have anything you are curious about for Adam?
What's your favorite, most obscure thing that you've learned along the way?
That's a good question. One of the more fascinating things recently was just some of the early concept ideas from the first draft of the mini comics before we got what we got, like before He-Man and the Power Sword. So a lot of people know early names for the brand before Masters of the Universe. There was Lords of Power, which probably a lot of people know now because there was that PowerCon Lords of Power Motu Origins set. The other one was Fighting Foemen, which can be confusing because there was a set of Motu classics that were called the Fighting Foemen, but don't really have anything to do with the Fighting Foemen as a He-Man thing. So that was, as far as I can tell, that's one of, it might be earlier than Lords of Power. So it's basically a draft of the first mini comic. All of the characters are subtly different or wildly different. Beastman is in charge, and Skeletor is like Beastman's lackey. He-Man is kind of a jerk. He's kind of a bully, and he has to be reined in by Stratos and Man-at-Arms. So you got all these different characterizations. You've got, instead of the Power Sword or the Sword of Power, you've got the Power Gem, which kind of is the thing that He-Man and Skeletor fight over to gain access to powers of Grayskull. So that kind of stuff. I was like, what was the earliest thing that they were thinking? What were some of these early ideas that got abandoned or got changed somehow?
Yeah, I remember seeing that commercial for the toys, and they had He-Man versus Beastman, like you were just saying, that he was the main bad guy at the time. So that was a little lot different to where they ended up heading to once basically, I guess, the second half of the mini comics. I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong. But once Filmation came, it was definitely more set.
Yeah, yeah. The Beastman as the head honcho guy. There is kind of a commercial. There's one of the earliest toy commercials that sort of it seems like that. I don't know if that's what they were trying to get across, or they were just trying to sell Beastman toys. But the change to Skeletor as the main villain happened. Obviously, for the first mini comics, Skeletor is the main villain, and Beastman is the lackey. But it's just interesting to me that got switched. And I know there's early material that say absorbed into like a sun that went supernova. There's all kinds of different ideas that they had that they abandoned.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. Anything else, Rhino? You got? I know you've been.
How do you think the line would have been different if Mark Taylor hadn't have left?
I think it would have. Well, first of all, the second wave would have been a lot less. Just so the second wave. I think what happened was he left and it caught them off guard. It took them a while to get another designer in, and actually the person they got to replace him as designer. I'm gonna forget his name. I have to look it up on my site because I'm blanking on his name. Martin Ariola. So, but they were kind of caught off guard, which is why I think you get in the second wave, you get just a lot of really kind of cheap reuse stuff. You get Faker, which is literally He-Man and Skeletor parts repainted. You get Zor and Screech, which are just coming straight from the Big Jim Eagle line. Evil Lyn is mostly just Tila with a different color and a new head. So a lot of that, I think, is just because they were caught off guard. But I think you would have, other than that, it would have been a line that was much less gimmick heavy, probably less silly. You probably wouldn't have gotten things like Stinkor, or Gwildor. I know, Rhino, you're not a fan of Gwildor.
Hate that guy.
You hate him.
I blame the movie. I blame the movie for Gwildor.
So is there a reason why he left? Maybe if it was taking off and being so successful, you would think you'd want to stay around for something like that.
Yeah, the way he described it in interviews was he didn't like that it was being taken over by corporate, and he was being more and more kind of being told to do, whereas he was kind of running it, and now is more like marketing was saying, we want to do a figure that has a swapping face feature. So he was, that's where Manny Faces came from. So he did like 5 different versions of a figure that could change his face. But he didn't, I don't think he liked sort of that end of things. He wanted to sort of be the creative drive behind it. So he left. I mean, he did very well. He did the Turtles line. He did a lot of things afterwards.
And I had so many turtles growing up. My mom sold them all in a big old tub after I left for college. So
yeah,
that's the way it works.
That's how a lot of it happened back then. You got your stuff thrown out, or you were able to keep a couple things here and there, but that's back then. Now we know as adults that we're not going to do that to our kids and throw out all their toys. You can't get rid of that. That's money.
Right.
I go through my son's stuff. Like he'll throw it. He's like, I don't want this anymore, and so I put it in the basement and go through it. I'm like, keep this, get rid of it.
Yeah, we've been doing that as well. My son, he's 19 now, but I still have some of his stuff where I know that he's going to want it later on, maybe like how I am.
Yeah.
I wish I would have had we were talking about earlier about like the first edition Man at Arms and all that stuff. So that's tough to lose. So no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I remember when I was leaving home, for some reason I was like, I didn't have a lot. I still had Castle Grayskull and like a few Horde figures. But I gave away Castle Grayskull to a nephew. I gave my Horde figures to my brother, and then like 10 years later, I would have been I was kicking myself. It's like, oh, I should have kept that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I have my original Trapjaw, my Triclops, Stratos, but and Ramman. But three of them, Triclops is still great shape, but the other three are beat up pretty bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish I would have. And I want to say, I wanted to ask you because I was trying to research this. When He-Man came out with Battle Cat, did that come out as a package in 1982 as well?
Yeah.
Or was that was it 82? Because I
That was
think that's how
82.
I got him. I don't remember getting him separate. I don't think my parents would have bought me both of them separately because I had them both, and I couldn't
Yeah.
recall. I'm fuzzy on. That's why I said I wish I had access to my Christmas pictures. But I know in 1982 I had Gray Skull, Wind Raider, He-Man with them, and I never had Beastman or Merman. But I had friends around the neighborhood that had all that stuff. So we played with each other's toys, and we made our own, basically a community almost of kids. You get this figure, you get that figure, I'll
Yeah.
get this figure, and stuff. Did you have any of that growing up?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had my best friend in kindergarten and my in first grade. We would go to each other's houses. I that's how I learned about half the stuff. Like I didn't have Stratos and Zodak, but he had them. That's where I learned about Roton and things like that. So yeah, we wouldn't trade necessarily, but we would team up all our stuff. So like together we had a pretty good collection that we could play with.
Yeah, that's how I grew up as well. And I had like a bunch of friends in the neighborhood, and we all grew up, and we which is weird. We were all the same age, just about, maybe a couple years apart. And the kid that lived across the street from me, he lived with his grandparents, and they bought him everything. And to give you a picture, he looks like Pugsley from the Addams Family TV show. So I was playing with it, but he had Snake Mountain and all that.
Yeah.
He had a lot of the good stuff, and I remember playing with those. And I wish I had them myself, but I knew he had them, so it didn't bother me so much. So that's always.
Right.
I just love hearing stories like that of growing up playing with the toys. We all, as collectors now, we all treat them differently. They're, to me, I treat them like I was telling the guys before offline, that I treat them like glass. I handle them. I just put them down. I don't touch them.
Yeah.
Got to dust them once in a while, but
Yeah.
it's back then you could just throw them around and beat them up.
Oh yeah, yeah. Could just bash them together. I wasn't a basher. I think that's a personality thing. Like
Mhm.
some kids are more like, oh, very carefully, like, punch, throw the punch, but you're not like scraping the paint.
That was me.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I think it's very different too, because again, my son's 7, and we buy him 2 figures, and it's literally 5 minutes later, and I'm like,
Yeah.
growing up, I remember literally like setting them up and talking about, I'm gonna, and it's like he doesn't even use like he doesn't talk when he plays with his toys. He grunts, and I'm like, what is the deal with this? Like, do you not? He's like, oh no, they're talking in my head, and I'm like, sure.
It sounds like it bothers you a little bit there, Ryan.
It does. It pisses me off. I fucking paid $28 for that figure, and 5 minutes later, it's like, oh look, his arm broke off.
Yeah.
No.
well, he's enjoying it. You're giving him memories. You know what I mean?
And that's why I buy like 2 of everything. Is like, yeah, no way you're playing with my toys. They're never gonna
See, back in the day, you wouldn't get 2 at a time. You'd only get 1, and if you broke it, oh well, that's on you.
Yep.
But
man,
our parents
lucky
weren't
I
collectors
forgot,
like
yeah,
that.
more than one.
Yeah, that's fun. So I don't know what to say here. Yeah, I feel bad
I
you've
do.
been talking. Go ahead, Ryan. Rhino, you can
So-
go ahead.
Ryan.
I know
So,
he's got tons of stuff he wanted to ask.
One of my favorite things is to instigate whether or not Zodak is good or evil.
The
Because
heroic
on-
warrior.
Packaging, in stories, in Ladybird books, he's evil. In some of the Golden books, he's neutral. In Filmation, he was neutral. Will you kind of touch on how the characters evolved over time, and how we got those? Like some of the art, it says evil cosmic enforcer. Some of the art just says cosmic enforcer. Some of it, says different things. Will you kind of touch on that?
Yeah.
For the
absolutely.
listeners, please.
Yeah, and it's funny because any of the early packaging, other than making where it's really obvious, like Skeletor or Beastman, they don't call out good and evil. Like there's even some advertising where Merman, he could be good, he could be evil, you don't know, or Stratos. So a lot of it's very vague in the beginning. So it starts out, and there's something for everybody. Whatever you think Zodak is, you're right. Um, so
Except for Ryan, he says he's a hero.
Look at this being neutral guy. Come on, he's the heroic. Come on, prove Rhino wrong.
yeah, it's like the Zap Brannigan thing. What makes a good man turn neutral, right? Okay, so Mark Taylor, I will say so in chronological order. So like when he first started as a piece of concept art on paper, Mark Taylor thought of him as a heroic warrior. He called him Censor. He had these I've got my little origins Zodak. He just lost his head.
I bet. Here, I'll send you an eBay link. You can buy another one.
All right, as long as my dog doesn't eat him. So you can see he's got the the goggles, and he's got some things around his ears. The idea was behind the helmet design. He has sensory. His equipment gives him sensory enhancement, so he can hear and see things from far away. So that's what Mark thought, but Mark didn't control. He did the designs, but he didn't control how it was marketed. So the first thing you get after Mark designed that is you get this piece of marketing that Mattel did for Toy Fair in 1982. It's basically it's a small pamphlet for people who wanted to be licensees of branded Masters of the Universe apparel or lunchboxes or whatever. So it introduces all the characters, and it shows Zodak as a bounty hunter. So he's basically like the Boba Fett of Masters of the Universe. And like we were kind of saying before the show started, there wasn't a lot of tight control over these ideas. It was just, people would come up with something, and then the next guy in charge would come up with something else. And it took them a few years before they really, rein that in a bit. So good guy, bounty hunter. Then when he's released in stores, it's just not said at all. He's released on the 8-back, so there's not that battle scene in the back. It's just Zodak, Cosmic Enforcer. So what is a Cosmic Enforcer? We don't know. It's not. They don't explain it. He's not in the first mini comics. He does appear in other 1982 media, though. So there's a series about halfway through the year. DC Comics does their own series of Masters of the Universe stories. They start with there's that He-Man versus Superman story, and then there's a handful of others that come out. And with that one, you've got Zodak flying around on the Castle Grayskull chair. Basically, they repurposed that design, gave it a kind of a sled at the bottom. So he's kind of what you would call neutral good. So he's trying to keep the balance of power. He doesn't want either He-Man or Skeletor to get too much advantage. There's supposed to be a balance for some reason. So that's where the neutral comes in. Filmation comes out the next year, 83. They take that tack. So they take the DC Comics idea and they run with that. All right, so we've got heroic, bounty hunter, neutral. Also in 1983, same year as Filmation, you start to get packaging from Mattel with cross-cell art. Instead of on the back of things like Attack Track and a few other things, you start to see Zodak listed on the back. It's not Cosmic Enforcer anymore. Now it's Evil Cosmic Enforcer. So whoever was doing the toys and packaging at the time, they were figuring, okay, I would guess it's because there were already quite a few heroes at the time between 82 and 83. And if you have Zodak as an evil warrior, it balances out a little more evenly. So he's evil there. And then I know there's a Ladybird book that comes out later where he's one of Skeletor's lackeys. So he's evil there. So I think there's even a TV commercial. It might be a British commercial where he's listed. He's kind of grouped with the evil warriors. So it's all over the place. There's no control over it. I know the probably the most popular characterization for Zodak is that neutral thing because it was in the Filmation cartoon and a lot of other cartoons and comics since. But yeah, choose your own adventure. It's whatever you think he is, he can be that.
Yeah, I remember seeing somewhere online. I think it was. I don't know if it was in Spain, like a Spanish advertisement, but it listed him and they translated like demon cosmic enforcer or something like that. So obviously it's like evil. But Zodak was one of the first figures I ever got. Here's the vintage, and he's got the evil Skeletor feet and the Skeletor arms, and like you said, it's kind of almost like, I was really into Star Wars at the time, so I'm transferring in from Star Wars to Masters, and with the bounty hunter. So when I hear the word enforcer, it sounds kind of harsh.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So I played him as a bad guy, as evil, and then I didn't realize that the artwork and all that stuff wasn't until '83 where it started announcing him as evil, and I think it kind of confirmed to me a little bit that he was bad until I saw the Filmation cartoon, which is my whole life is Filmation Rhino. And he always gets on me. That's all I care about is Filmation. But it was a little confusing with me at the time where he wasn't bad. But I accept him as neutral. I don't accept him as a hero, but like Ryan does. But I always played him as evil when I was a kid. That's why I always stick with him. We make fun arguments about it, online and stuff like that. We just goof around. But that's how my concept of Zodak was when I was young. Is playing him as evil at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's made of all the evil body parts. The evil feet, the evil arms. He's got Beastman's chest, and like you said, when you look at the back, you started off with 4 heroes and 4 other characters. So to me, that was like, okay, these are the 4 good guys. These are the 4 bad guys. And like Bobby said, when they started coming out with the packaging that said evil cosmic enforcer, that reaffirmed it. There's some, when they went from the stack art to where the top of the back of the packaging had like a little scene, they listed him as evil in that. So that's where the evil came from me, was from all of that stuff.
So think about it. You said, Skeletor's arms, Beastman's chest. Frankenstein wasn't bad. He was good. So he's just made from all these parts. And, come on. Hello.
For one, it's not Frankenstein. It's Frankenstein's monster. Get your stuff straight.
Yeah, Frankenstein's monster is your example of how he's good. I feel like I won. I feel like I won the argument.
So in Ryan's head, Zodak is Abby normal.
In all honesty and in all fairness, since Adam doesn't agree with me, we're going to end this conversation now, and we're never going to have him back on again. So,
I didn't say what I thought.
That was the closest you believe is true.
Yeah,
that was closest to anybody's going to come to agreeing with you ever.
And guys, honestly, in my heart of hearts, the only reason I do it because it gets a razz out of people, and I think it's hilarious.
Oh yeah, we're just.
So now he's always good. He's just good. It is.
So Adam, what do you think of Zodak then? How do you feel as him as a character?
He said he didn't want to give an answer. He's like,
no. Well, that's my here's all
that's
the
your
evidence.
Politically correct.
That's like what's the history behind it? I don't know. I never think of him as evil. I don't necessarily think of him as heroic, but I don't actually think of him as neutral either. I think of him more of he's like this mysterious, and I'm influenced here by another Mark Taylor thing, but he's like this mysterious guy who's kind of in it for himself. He'll help He-Man if it's, but you don't really know what his motivations are. That's kind of how I think of him. There was actually another Mark Taylor interview. It was done 20 years ago, where he talks about Zodak, and what he says is he thinks that Zodak's people were maybe like an ancient race on Eternia that had something to do with how Castle Grayskull came to be, and he would understand what's inside Castle Grayskull more than other people, and he might help He-Man, but you wouldn't really know sort of what his motivations are. A lot of Mark's ideas were like that. A lot of people are just more, they would come together for a purpose, but they were more, they weren't necessarily in a formal team, and they had their own agendas. So I kind of group him with the heroes, but with an asterisk. Like, he's not going to come when He-Man calls, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's how I feel Skeletor's guys are too. They're all there to get their own gain somehow. They're not completely. I mean, Evil Lynn's the same way. Like I love that episode where she comes on the screen and they're in the basher or the collector, and he's like, "Well, what do you want?" And she's like, "I want your power, Skeletor." I mean, that's perfect. And that's how I think a lot of they don't seem. I know, like Rhino likes the first 4 mini comics where it's really, organic.
Those are my favorite.
Yeah, the Filmation it's more comical and everything, but it's a little goofy with the way they're characterized compared to the darker version. But did you like Zodak as a kid?
I saw him once. Like, I didn't have him. I saw him at my friend's house, my best friend. I went over, and he had him. I liked him. I thought he was cool looking. I remembered him later. He's one of the first ones that I got. I think if you're gonna stand for like a He-Man character, I know I do. Merman's my favorite, but Zodak's another one where I think there's a lot of potential. Like, I always think like they could do a series that's just like a spin-off that just follows Zodak around. Like something like The Mandalorian, but it's
man,
whatever. Yeah.
now you got me all hyped up. Let's do it.
Yeah,
That would be really good.
yeah. He's a cool character.
So I take it back. You agree with me? You can come back on the show. That's fine.
Yeah.
See, it's Ryan's narcissism.
Puppies here.
Am I wrong, or is it somewhere that Mark said that he kind of originally felt Zodak was kind of like a counterbalance to the sorceress? Am I thinking of a different character?
I don't know. I haven't.
Zodak was the balance to the sorceress for He-Man. Like she would lead him one way, and Zodak would be like, "Well, maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't do that."
Yeah, it could be.
In like the original drafts.
Yeah. Well, I know, and then Zodak, he was kind of created because Mark's original sorceress design. They sort of combined that with Tila, and so they needed 8 figures. So that's how Zodak came about anyway. So and Zodak is the only of Mark's original B sheets where it actually looks like the toy design, because he already knew what parts were available to him. So it's got like the Skeletor arms exactly like Skeletor has. It's got the Skeletor legs. The other stuff it didn't have exactly like that because they hadn't been sculpted yet. So he kind of went his own direction. So, but yeah, I could see that. I don't recall that specifically.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that.
Maybe I made it up.
Yeah, you did. You were sleeping last night thinking about Zodak.
Maybe I made it up.
And then you just remembered your
Who doesn't
dream.
go to sleep thinking about Zodak, right?
It's because you think he's evil. You just have this made up stuff in your head.
I feel like there was something in one of the comics about that, though. I feel like there was something where like he teamed up with Sorceress once before. But it was kind of the yin and yang,
Yeah, and his gun was like a gun and a mace combined, right? Originally.
Yeah, it's that's why it's got the flared design, so it could be used, to hit somebody over the head as well. Which they took in 2002, right? And they really made it into a mace.
Yeah, I remember seeing you tweet that before, and it kind of blew my mind. I never thought of it that way, and now that I look at it, that's awesome.
It was a suppressor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One detail I was like,
it was some kind of crazy laser gun.
Yeah, well, it looks like a laser gun, but he's got like this on the bottom of his armor. He's got like what looks like bullets in like a. So is it like a laser, but you've got to load the cartridge for it or something? I don't know.
It's a battery packs.
Yeah, battery packs. Yeah,
little cartridges of evil.
Cartridges of
plug in
evil and/or neutrality and/or goodness.
Yep, evil D cells. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if he has the power to stop Skeletor but doesn't, that's pretty evil.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna, get philosophical about it, like,
that's more godliness,
right?
Yeah, I mean that's evil.
Yeah,
I have a degree in theology. He is not evil. Stop saying it.
We're doing the Zodak theodicy, right?
The book according to Zodak.
So is Zodak the actual master of the universe?
Maybe.
Oh,
so that's what we need to do, Ryan. Me and you need to write a book. You can do the theological part. I'll do the psychological part.
I mean, they do it for everything. They got like the theology of Star Wars and Doctor Who, and well, sure. mine will literally be one page. He is good, and that's it, and then we're done. So I already wrote it, copyrighted that.
200-page book, and there's only just that one line on the first page.
No, it's the end of the book. You got to get to the end of the book to get to that.
Each page has a huge font that just says "hero." Turn to page hero. Turn to page hero. Oh man, that's excellent. So, yeah.
I got another question.
No, go ahead, Ryan.
Adam. So, as you have collected all of this information, over the years, and you've compiled it, and again, thank you for doing that. But now that you are seeing the new Eternia Masterverse figures coming out, how does that make you feel after you've seen these designs in their prototype stages and that's being adapted into toys? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that. When Classics was out, I was always like the first one, like more concept stuff, more, I love things like Demo Man and, this other, so the new Eternia Master stuff is interesting because it's not like, one for one, here's a single concept drawing, we've turned it into a 3D object. They take little influences from different things, like the Masterverse He-Man. He's got the helmet from the original Tony Guerrero prototype He-Man, but he's not just that. He's got there's some influences from other, Mark Taylor drawings. It's got some of its own stuff. It's got, the shoulder pads are, not really from a concept thing. So it mixes different concepts. It adds new things. Of all the Masterverse stuff, that's the stuff that interests me the most. I'm all for as much concept stuff as we can get.
Yeah, so we just learned on the new Eternia that Jitsu is more towards the heroic side. I don't know if you read the bio on that yet.
Yeah, I saw that.
What do you think of that?
I think that's fine if you want to, like, say, if this is like Jitsu, whatever, post, maybe after Skeletor, the fall of Skeletor, or whatever, or maybe it's his origin story. I don't know. Alternate takes that are somewhere different along the timeline. I'm fine with that. That actual design though, I'm not super excited about. He's got a normal size chopping hand. Not, I don't know. The design of that one doesn't grab me too much. I don't know if it's based on something. I haven't seen, there's not a lot of concept art for Jitsu, at least that I've seen, other than what we can infer from the Filmation cartoon probably was taking from some of that concept art, but we haven't seen the original concept art for that. So maybe it's drawing from that.
Yeah, because I was kind of curious. I didn't know if you knew if that was like a concept of him prior, of him being good or not. But I saw that too with his hand a little bit smaller. I was like, I didn't care for that either too much. And that kind of doesn't appeal to me. I like the whole version of that figure. His hand is just, it bugs me a little bit because it makes you wonder if Fisto is going to come with a small glove.
Right, yeah.
Or it's on his left, or is on his left hand instead of his right, or something goofy. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, apart from that, I'm like, I'll never buy the Classics one, but I really like the way the Classic one looks just because of the price. But like, this is a good alternative. I mean, as good as we're going to get compared to like Origins or the Vintage, just kind of that more classic, more robust look.
So what do you think of the new Masterverse figures? Do you like them, or are you just dead set on Classics? Or because I hear a lot of people say they love them, and some people are really dead set against them.
Yeah. So I used to collect I used to collect classics. I'm one of these dummies that sold off their classics collection. Other than I just have a couple of figures. I do like the sculpture and anatomy of classics more. But so like the early stuff that would come out for Masterverse, like the cartoon He-Man and Skeletor, I wasn't as much into. Like I thought like the legs are huge and the chest is small and some of the proportions are a little off. I really do like though the barbarian Skeletor, the Viking He-Man. I think those are some really great designs. The colors are better. I think early on the colors were a little bit janky sometimes. Yeah. I think they've gotten them better. So it's grown on me. There's a few things that still bug me. Like I don't know. I don't like double jointed elbows on figures, especially on muscly figures. I think that breaks up the sculpt too much. I prefer like the classic single joint. I think it's okay on, so that's it's not as bad on Zodak.
See, I remember you mentioning about how the bicep is kind of like, it's weird. It's hard to show on that.
Yeah,
it just shrinks. It doesn't seem,
you get that V cut there.
Yeah.
What I don't like though is the I call it the football shoulder pad type look for the chest. It's hard with this figure because he's got the thing on it, but it's got that weird cut around here instead of having the.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's got that swivel. I don't care too much for that. It's and they're a lot slimmer, more like a WWE figure or something like that.
Yeah,
but it's metallic,
I think
so you know
the arms need to be bigger for sure. They've done better on some of the chests, getting them a little bigger, but.
Do you like Origins? I believe you do because I've seen you post a lot of Origins.
Yeah, I've got almost everything Origins. If I see one at the store, even if I wasn't gonna buy it, if I happen to see it, like I get it.
So we always say
we don't know what that's like at all.
Yeah, that's a disease that we all have.
Like I was saying before, I'm not going to get the Roton, and then I end up finding it. I went out dead after you posted your Twitter, and I was like, let me think about it, and I was like. I went over to Walmart and I saw it. I got it. You know, it's just I have to get it. You know, I know these guys.
And you weren't going to get Pigman. You weren't going to get any.
No, I wanted Pigman or Pigface or Pighead, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Pigface.
Yeah,
Pighead. Sorry, my kids will kill me. Those are some of their favorite characters for some reason.
Hey, that's great though. Like we were saying before, you know, it's their masters of the universe, what they're growing up and learning. You know, so yeah. So
I think Masterverse does better when it gets away from the classic designs, because that seems to be like the thing that I run into a lot with people on Twitter is they're comparing Masterverse to classics and they're like, oh, classics is so much better, it did the original look so much better. And you know, and I agree when you're going with just recreating the original vintage toy in a different format. But you know, the new Eternia stuff, and I know y'all are sick of hearing me talk about it, but I just think it's incredible. I love the sculpts. I love the looks. I think it's really well done. It's such a great departure from the vintage toys. It gives us a new perspective on all these characters. I think they really shine when they go away from trying to just recreate what's already been done in a different format.
Yeah. And I like what they did with Zodak because you can have all this extra stuff. You know, he's got these shoulder pads. You can have the 2000X mace, but you can also strip that off and make him like a vintage like design as well.
And the same thing they did with Beastman too. That Beastman is fantastic.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
The new Eternia Beastman's incredible. I mean, it's just such a solid figure.
I got that one. I'm looking for like a bear toy that I can take his extra armor and put it on the bear and paint the bear red so I can make, because that was the early Beastman concept of the bear with the spiky armor.
Yeah, the one behind Bobby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it right there. Yep.
Well, I meant on the poster thing.
Your
other shoulder.
He was even more bear-like.
Even before then, he was literally like just a bear. So that's more like the red ape kind of.
I guess. Yeah. Order another Grizzlord just to throw the stuff on him.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking I'm going to look at like Hobby Lobby or something where they'll sell like little bear statues or wildlife things. try to find something to make that.
So let me ask about classics. What did you, since you do your blog and you have a lot of the history in your head, what do you think of like how they changed names? Because I'm always curious on how people, some people are like completely, they love it. Some people don't like it. What are your thoughts? Like Zodak, like when we were talking about Zodak, he's named Zodak Zur. Why would they throw in that stuff?
I don't know. I think the idea was like real names. Zodak is fine as a name. You don't need to change Zodak, but like some names it's more like a description, like Beastman. So I know the idea was, okay, what's this character's actual name? His mom didn't call him Beastman. I don't need that stuff. Usually I thought the names they didn't appeal to me that were invented. Some of them, Duncan for Man at Arms, that's fine. That's was in the cartoon. But most of the names, they're a little too Star Trek-y too. They don't really sound like Eternia. Right. But I could see in a movie, like, you might want a real name for Ram Man other than just Ram Man, even if that's his nickname. I don't know.
Yeah, I like the original concept. I don't like having stuff added on later on. So the guys rip on me a little bit because I'm always talking a lot about Filmation and stuff, and they like the other cartoons as well. What's your favorite version cartoon for Masters?
I love the look of Filmation. It's beautiful looking cartoon. Story-wise, I really like 2000X. Even though I didn't care for all of the redesigns, like the Battle Cat 2000X bugs me with all the extra stuff and the fake claws on him and all that. But the stories were really fun, and I like that it's a little bit more modern and they build on each other. Filmation, though, you just sit down and watch it, and you kind of feel good, and you feel like you're 7 years old again.
Yeah, that's how I am with Filmation. The music, the sound effects that's burned in my head. I can remember it, and I grew up. That was my main Masters of the Universe. I didn't read a lot of the mini comics because, like I said, I didn't get a lot of figures as my friends had them, so I didn't have access to them because they threw them all out, or whatever. We scattered them around. Yeah. But that was my whole mythology, was Filmation and stuff. But I do love 2000X. I think it's great. Were you a fan of Revelations?
Revelations, it's okay. I would put it like a tier below 2000X. I wasn't like, on the outrage bandwagon or anything. I didn't mind the story so much. It's not the story. It was more like some of the choices or the execution sometimes didn't make sense, or like I didn't understand. I could see, I'm happy to see a story arc about Tila, but some of her reactions didn't seem natural. A few things like that. Overall, I liked it. I'm looking forward to the second one, but it's, it wasn't actually, I think, even though I liked the look of the Kevin Smith one better, the new CGI one, the stories are actually kind of a little more fun on that one. I feel.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like
it's a huge departure, but yeah, the writing's better.
So I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing we have to like think about is like if you look at Filmation, like they're kind of subcontained in like this 25-minute show, and I think that's kind of the CGI. Like I've only watched the first season, so I can't say if it's changed, but I think that's kind of that concept. And I think where Revelation is like it's this ginormous story arc, and so like it's not self-contained, and I think that's where you really have to look at those differentiations of, hey, this is truly a story arc and containing them all together, rather than, hey, I can sit down and watch one episode of maybe the CGI show or Filmation, and even 2000X to a degree. But I feel like even 2000X kind of with the Snake Men coming in kind of connected together, but you could really watch those. And that's where I think people have issues with that, because again, growing up, we all sat down and we were like, I love this. I love Filmation. That's all it is. And I think that's why people will say it's because Kevin Smith lied, whatever. I'm not going to get into that argument. But again, I think it's that whole concept of I can't just sit down and watch a 30-minute episode and it's just self-contained. And I think,
right,
in my mind, that's why I think people have this outrage of it's not that. It's so much.
The thing people forget, though, is that, the Filmation was made for '80s kids. You know, it was made for those of us growing up in that era. And whereas Revelation, though, is made for those kids that grew up. You know, it was supposed to be a more mature take. You know,
but again, so many people have that in their head that this is what they want, and I think that's why they're like, "Oh, I hate Revelation," but I like the CGI because it's self-contained. It's in this little bubble, and even that CGI is made for the littler kids to say, "Hey, I'm going to throw you down for 30 minutes while I cook dinner, and you're going to watch one episode," and they don't have to connect the dots to anything. They can sit down and enjoy it. And I think that's, again, that you have to disassociate those two from that. Otherwise, you really do run into that, like, oh my God. Because I loved Revelations. Like, everything I loved about it. I love the story. I love the art. And, you know, there's people that are just like, it was garbage and I hated it. And I'm like, and Brian likes the CGI, and like, I've watched it and I'm like, it's Power Rangers for motu people, you know? So again, it's not my
favorite. It gets better past season 1. You got to watch the rest of it.
The CGI is a lot like the 2000X. You know, you can watch one episode, but it does have an overreaching arc for the whole thing.
Yeah, it does.
You know, you can watch one episode, but they definitely build on each other. If you watch them out of order, you know, the Filmation ones you can watch in any order, and it doesn't change anything. The 2000X and CGI, you have to watch in order, or it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So what do you think of New Adventures then? Are you a fan of New Adventures? Do you like that?
Yeah. That was another thing. It was like I had been writing on the vintage line for a while on my blog, and I wanted a change of pace. So I started doing some research into New Adventures, and then also talking to David Wolfram too. He worked on that. My first reaction, I remember as I saw it as a kid, and my first reaction was that I hated it, right? Like, because He-Man doesn't look like He-Man. He's like this. He looks like Errol Flynn in space or something. You know, he's got a ponytail and blue pants, and but you know, I think I've as an adult I've connected more with the toys, especially the villains. I love the Skeletors variants, like these cybernetic kind of you know, Giger-esque monstrosities with tubes in his skin, and some of the other villains, you know, are really fun, like this, you know, Slushhead and what's that, Quake and all those guys. The heroes are a little blander. I'm sure that was an intentional choice, and I know they even reused some of the heroes for other lines because they're a little bit generic. But it's a fun line. It's not everybody's taste, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, it took me a while to get into that cartoon. I tried watching it because it came out when I was a junior in high school. So I wasn't even watching or involved with Masters anymore at that point in time. And then when it came out on DVD, I just skipped over it because I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm not going to watch it. And then I saw it on Peacock, and I got through the couple first episodes, and I was like, Skeletor is really bugging the hell out of me. He looks too much like Jim Carrey from Mask. You know, I know later on his eyes changed from the white, but yeah, it was just weird to me, and the way he was acting and stuff. And then I just finally watched it, and I got into it, and I actually enjoyed it more because I'm trying to be open-minded. So I watched the whole series. I enjoyed it. I think like you were saying, the heroes were real bland, which they are. But I think when they brought in Tuscador and Sagitar and stuff, those guys were better, and Spinwhip. So when they added those guys, the heroes started to get a little cooler in the show. But those mutants, you got to love the mutants.
They're fun. They're a lot of fun. The ships are great.
So
I love Spaceship Eternia.
Did anybody know anybody that liked it as a kid, though?
Nope.
I had that power sword, though, man. I played with that sucker so much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the younger side, so I was born in '82, and I know nobody I grew up with liked that new show. I mean, we were all.
It was just too different.
We're done.
Yeah,
that's happening a lot.
Reruns of Filmation and called it good.
That's all you need is Filmation.
Yeah.
I like it all, you know, but Filmation's my go-to. I can always watch it, no matter.
What's your favorite episode, Bobby?
Well, that's the Diamond Ray of Disappearance, and I know everybody says that, you know, but it's fantastic because you don't get a lot of episodes with all the characters in it together. And when Skeletor goes through the role of all the characters, I mean, that's some cool stuff. And the music's a little different in that episode compared to the rest of them. You got like a different score. And that's just, and I always like the episodes where they always have an object, or like the shaping staff and stuff like that, where it's all revolves around that. So that was always cool. But that Diamond Ray, it's.
Are you going to get that prop?
No, I'm not. You didn't listen to me when I was on the other podcast where the guy asked me all these questions?
I listened to you, Bobby.
Thank you.
It's your favorite episode. How are you not going to get the prop?
Well, I can't afford $250 for a piece of plastic.
Excuse me, who bought the $400 top?
Hey, it's vintage character. Like I said, okay, vintage figures mean the most to me. I keep saying that because I grew up with them, and I never had. I didn't have all. I'm missing Twistoid, and I'm missing some of the Pre-Eternia stuff. The dinosaurs and things like that. But I got everything else. But I wasn't going to get Rotar, but I saw him at a convention this summer, and I was like, screw it, I'm getting it. So I got him. So,
we love you, Bobby.
But really, be real though. You could buy a 3D printer for that and make your own.
Yeah, but it's not the real thing. That's how I am. It's got to be real.
Yeah.
Well, I think as we kind of wrap up here, it's been great chatting with you. I think all of us are in agreement. We'd love to have you back into the future if you would love to.
Oh, he's permanent now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We did the whole episode of his interview, and now he's stuck. He's in the he's with us.
Well, shit! If we do that with everybody, we're gonna have like 400 people on the podcast.
Do it.
Yeah, and then it really will look like Hollywood Squares on your podcast.
No whammies. We just would like to say thank you for taking time out of your schedule.
Yes,
thank you. Everybody's busy in today's day and age. We love, I like to describe it as, we're four middle-aged men talking about child's toys who really enjoy it. So thank you so much for being on the show. I'll let everyone say their thanks, but thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun. It was my second podcast ever, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for everything that you do with the website and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. That's my OCD is there for everybody.
Well, again, as we kind of wrap up here, remember
I didn't get to say nothing.
Oh my God!
Me off.
Jesus,
Ryan, you have to give Bobby a chance to say Filmation one more time.
Filmation. No, what I wanted to say is that I'm gonna put a link in the description for your website for battleramblog.com, and all your information will be in there for the people who are watching or listening to be able to access your content on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. So I'll have you in the description. So go check out his website. It's fantastic. I've been reading it for a few years, and it's got a lot of great information, especially with a lot of the vintage stuff and the concept and all. I mean, it is awesome, and it's always been one of my go. Yeah, he's awesome on Twitter. And I'm excited to have you on this. This has been fantastic. It means a lot to me to have you on here. It does, especially.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we just started talking. June? I think I started mentioning to you maybe to be a guest on here. So it finally worked out today.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun. I was a little hesitant, I think, just because I haven't done it before. I'm a little nervous to do it, but
that's how. If you've listened to ours, like our first one was rough, and we're getting better, and it's just like, again, we're four middle-aged guys talking about toys with little plastic hunks of plastic, so we just have fun with it. So, and I think like Bobby said, I'm gonna shoot it over. We have a group text here that links to your Mark Taylor interview. Since we talked heavily about him, we'll also put that in the description just to link people directly to it. So it's really interesting.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
like Bobby said, we're on all forms of platforms. Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. All podcasts, please like, subscribe. If you want to be notified, click the bell icon here on YouTube. Give us a follow.
Hit the follow button.
Yeah, we appreciate it. All of you guys' support. So again, this is the Collectors of Power. We're signing off. Have a great evening, a great morning, a great afternoon, whenever you're listening to this.
Battle Armor He-Man's the best He-Man.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Zodak's good.
All right. Good journey. Zodak's neutral good.